Hi, folks. Thank you for joining me here today. My name is Armin. I lead our partner engineering efforts here at Hex. And today I want to have an open and candid discussion around the current state of LLM chatbots and how and what I'm seeing today in the industry. There's a lot of different vendor solutions out there. A lot of folks are building DIY solutions. Folks are working with Cortex analysts, say Snowflake Intelligence. And I think there's a bit of an over-indexing happening in the kind of curation and maybe even the concern for LLM accuracy. Naturally, this is top of mind. LLMs need to be deterministic in nature, and we try to make them as deterministic as possible. But I think the idea or the approach of having this kind of unit testing, or maybe synthesizing your business user questions into some SQL queries and then feeding those into the LLM or building out samples off of that, is a bit of a fool's errand. You need to really think about building a kind of an auditable system, a system that can be malleable and flexible over time, and one that your business users are actually building out and hardening the capabilities and the types of questions your LLMs can answer. So keep that in mind. We'll kind of explore how Hex is handling this today. I'll share some more of my thoughts. But if you're even developing things out yourself, I'd love to hear from you. Maybe you learned something here today, or if anything, it's thought-provoking. So let's jump into Hex. And before I showcase anything or do any work, I first want to configure my model provider. So I've gone ahead of time and actually set this up to go look at my Snowflake instance, specifically Snowflake Cortex. So this is a key pair setup where I can actually go and utilize Claude hosted inside of Snowflake and Cortex in my walled kind of garden. The big benefits for this is it keeps my IT team happy. My model residency lives inside where my data is, so I'm able to actually pass data into these models. Okay, so now that this is configured, let's actually jump into Hex's main page, and we'll start here with a thread. And maybe I want to ask a question like, give me a breakdown, marketing, maybe just our opportunities, that would make more sense. Analyze the first touch source. Okay, so let's say I'm a marketing manager. I'm going to come in, I'm going to interface with just this chatbot interaction. I'm going to now scope it to just my prod data warehouse. And we'll come back to that in a minute. But at this point in time, I triggered off this thread in Hex. It's doing a lot of different things under the hood that's abstracted away from the end user. First and foremost, let's talk about this data a little bit. So I am using a mimicked or basically mirrored B2B SaaS data set. This is mimicking kind of from our internal data. Obviously, it's all abstracted away from or obfuscated as needed. But ultimately, we're here looking at kind of sales and marketing data. And I've asked threads to go look at these opportunities and effectively where their first touch sources. What can we contribute to our sales opportunities? So to start off, Hex is actually going to think a bit around the relative metadata it has access to. So as I kind of open this up, it's going to look at existing Hex projects in the platform that it has access to. So it's kind of going to fight me a little bit as it's working, but as we try to go through this, you can actually see and kind of realize that there's existing dashboards or assets out there that it can go leverage. And one big call out here is everything in Hex is notebook backed, and we'll see how this kind of takes shape over time. So great, we have some access to these projects. Next, we're actually going to look at some of this model data. So this can come in the form of, say, a semantic view, any sort of semantic modeling you ingest or create in Hex, and we'll take some time to explore that in more detail. But it is also looking at metadata that comes from the warehouse directly. So your table descriptions, your column descriptions, all of that can be brought in automatically without any configuration and passed into the LLM for additional context. If you have DBT metadata as well, that can also come in. Then does this little bit of a funneling effect where it looks at the underlying data itself, looks at the tables coming from the warehouse, you can look at model data, and it's giving me kind of some insights of saying which specific tables it's looking at from the warehouse. It will kind of take that information, it will start realizing what it is actually funneled down to, and start exploring upon it, creating some SQL cells, maybe Python cells, thinking about visualizations it can do, all in an effort to answer my question. Now, as you're kind of seeing this for the first time, maybe you're thinking to yourselves, okay, this seems kind of neat, but it's taking a bit of time. And that's a fair call out. It's a bit by design to start. What we're first releasing with this kind of idea of threads is this deep thinking mode, a mode where, remember, we're accessing all of my prod data warehouse at this time. I'm bringing in all kinds of context. It has to reason, it has to iterate over that. And that naturally comes at a cost, and that cost is time. But with that, kind of the benefit to it is you're actually allowing it to build out a very, very detailed, thorough analysis, one that greatly mimics, say, a data scientist or embedded data analyst within your team. So next kind of iterations of this will be a bit more for those like rapid, snappy responses that maybe just rely on, say, a semantic model. But for the time being, we're first taking this approach where you can get very, very detailed reporting done without having to weave in your data analyst or data scientist to do it. Okay, so now it's finished. It's looking at some kind of key findings information for us. It's given us this nice chart here that we can see and utilize. It breaks things down by my opportunity type. The first touch source looks like trials are really, really strong here, focusing on new business. I can also do additional explorations on this, or I'll open up a new window. We can see we have these dimensions and measures that we can drag and drop as well. I can look at the underlying data as a table view if I wanted to look at any anomalies, so on and so forth. So we're kind of extending what the end user can do in this chat interface. We come down here, it gives us a little summary of what's going down, types of breakdowns it wanted. It showcases also the relevant projects, so on and so forth. Now, as you're seeing this, it may seem very exciting. Maybe it seems a little bit even worrying, right? Hey, we're kind of exposing a ton of information. How do I know that it's not hallucinating? Do I trust these SQL queries? How do I try to mimic it and make it be more deterministic? These are all very valid concerns and ones that have been raised by our customers, but also something that's extremely top of mind for our product teams here today. So one of the first kind of caveats and uniqueness to kind of conversational analytics in Hex is every single thread, every single even project in Hex is created by a notebook under the hood. So I'm going to go ahead and save this as a project. And I'll go back quickly and I just hit save as project. What I can see here is now a brand new view. We've actually gone into a net new Hex project, and every single Hex project is backed by a notebook. And this extends itself to the fact that every single thread or conversation that you have is effectively a notebook under the hood, but it's just abstracted away to the end user. So let's clear this up and just see. So I have all of my chat conversation that we highlighted in a markdown cell. But this is really, really powerful for, say, the data team member, the person that has to monitor and ensure the accuracy of the system. Maybe you want to go and audit it. You want to understand what actual SQL query was run without having to, say, dig through some query logs. It can also expand and look at the different charting you have done. So it expands this and you can actually see what were the actual filters it used. I can also extend this project where I can have access to a plethora of different Hex cells here, like our SQL Python cells, chart cells, pivot cells, table cells. So anytime the agent is actually utilizing these cell types, I have the ability to audit and review this kind of in real time as needed. So you can see here it's kind of building out this whole report for me. It's using a bunch of SQL cells, maybe doing some table joins. I have a very kind of comfortable and detailed understanding as to how the agent is thinking. Okay. Now, one of the things that was great so far, right, we addressed how non-technical users can do it. You see how this can chain and kind of bring in a technical person to ensure its accuracy. One of the bigger use cases that we're seeing take off here is the idea where you can actually leverage, say, our notebook agent as a technical persona. Maybe you are on the data team, and in this particular question, a business user comes back and says, hey, can you actually do a deep dive on the seasonality that our opportunities are coming from? So I can ask a simple question like something, let's actually clean this up a little bit. Let's do a new section, and I'll call this seasonality analysis. Great. At this point, I can scope the Hex notebook agent to this project. I can also add any particular cell types or agent queries or requests that have happened over time. But in this case, we'll keep it open-ended. And we'll say, give me a seasonality assessment, seasonality analysis of our opportunities. First touch source, something like this. So it's going to go out, and in this case, it's going to be slightly different. We'll actually do much more planning and reasoning and kind of interact with me over time. It will naturally be aware of all of the different cell types in Hex as I hover over this again. It can go select to use SQL to Python. I can actually tell it to go ensure that you have to use, say, Snowpark if I wanted to. It will build out charting capabilities. And just similarly as Threads has access to all this metadata, it has this notebook agent has access to the same metadata as I touched upon, but it also has access to all the different specific cell types within the notebook. So if I wanted to add this chart, if I wanted to add any sort of data frame that I'm working with, or a Snowpark data frame, or a SQL query, or a CTE, maybe even a function that I'm creating, I can go and actually mimic and kind of bring that into my agent workflow here. Then it will go and reason with that and start building this out. So we can see, again, we're hitting that prod data warehouse. It's building out some reporting for me. It's going to try to detect some seasonality. We can see kind of we have some pending changes. As I scroll down, it's building out a chart. It's breaking all the seasonality by first touch source in this case. And you can see now we're working in kind of this co-pilot, working together with this agent as a technical user. And it's building out these charts on my behalf. It gives me a nice breakdown or actually link to any one of these projects in its summary. I can then review these changes if I want. Let's say I want to keep them all, and now they persist and they're within my actual notebook right now. I can go create these as outputs. I can go extend events them. So this is the idea, taking a step back, where a user might start an initial question. Instead of going directly to the data team or making a ticket, they can start in threads. But maybe there's a problem that happens. Maybe there's some data it doesn't have access to. Maybe you just want to extend upon this to give some deeper insights. You have a very rapid ability to just perform this kind of insights fast lane iteration against, say, a thread. So a different kind of service launching points, if you will. Okay, so this is cool. We've kind of gone from a thread to observability into a notebook or extending it to do deeper analysis. But let's say I want some of this to persist. Maybe the seasonality analysis is something that my marketing and sales leaders want to have in a more persistent fashion where they're not constantly having to go back and ask questions about it. What I can do in that case is let's actually start cleaning this up a bit. Since I know it's going to be persistent, I'm going to delete this particular section. I don't think we need it. Okay. And what I'm going to do is command click this app builder view here. And what this is doing is actually saying, take any and all the assets that you want from the left-hand notebook side and turn them into some form of app. This could be a dashboard, a report, whatever your heart desires. And in this app builder, I can go ahead and simply, let's say I scroll up and I want to bring in one of these charts. I can simply say, okay, remove it or build it or add it to the app builder. So maybe if I mimic this on this side, I can say, hey, I don't actually want this to be in the app builder. And we can see these kind of win rates here as well. Let's minimize this a bit so we can actually see this. Here are those two charts. If I wanted to add or remove it again, simply as adding it or removing it like so. And on the app builder side, everything here is drag and drop. So this is where you kind of get this like BI-like style, but it is powered by the notebook under the hood, which offers you all sorts of flexibility with SQL, with Python, with Snowpark, with any sort of additional SQL cells that we provide. I can drag and drop this, and these two kind of paradigms between the notebook and the app builder is always connected to the hip. So if I wanted to add additional text, I can drag and drop text and say, this is my op mix over time, something like this. Maybe this is my new heading, so on and so forth. You can start styling, creating this dashboard. Okay, so we've kind of gone again from hardcore notebook stemming from a thread into some persistent app if you want it. And I'll showcase an idea of what this sort of sales and marketing dashboard could look like from a production standpoint. So maybe you've done this, and again, every single Hex project, every single Hex thread, its back end is that book. Just like this very fancy looking BI dashboard, it all is just a notebook under the hood. And when I create these and publish them, this is the final view that my end users can interact with. They can do additional explorations as well, like we showcased. They can drill down on their data. They can view the underlying data. They can cross filter. A lot of the kind of de facto BI filtering capabilities or offerings on dashboards make their way into these Hex apps. Okay, so this is pretty neat in my opinion. We're diving a little bit in the world of like BI now maybe. We've gone from notebooks, we've gone to conversational analytics. Is this a little bit fragmented, right? Do you really need a tool that does all of this? Well, and kind of our idea is we think you do, but ultimately, how is all this connected? What is the connecting glue or tissue behind this to make it make sense, right? We have different kind of avenues how we interact with LLMs today. What is the cohesive strategy behind all this? One of the kind of forays that we're seeing people really adopt, and that I'm really excited about, is as you're building out these curated dashboards, reports, business assets, they have a lot of heavily baked transformation logic and SQL and Python queries that are really, really powerful for LLMs. And yes, these LLMs are aware of these dashboards, but building out what is effectively a semantic model to power these LLMs is kind of the next evolution and are the very, very critical component to this context engine. So how can I turn one of these dashboards into, say, that metadata that LLMs really like? So let's go ahead and see how we can do this. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into an admin view in Hex. And I have a few capabilities here. So to start, I can actually import a Snowflake semantic view. Maybe I just showcase this super quickly. Let's do a test. My type will be Snowflake. My data connection can be that prod warehouse again. And now Hex is going to go browse that prod warehouse. It will see the semantic views it has access to. You can see here we have a magnitude of a few ones. I can say I want to bring in this sort of B2B sales model. I think that was the one I was using. We'll hit next. And here we go. We've actually brought in that Snowflake semantic view very, very quickly, very easily. You have all of that very enriched metadata now available to Hex. And that's great to get started. If you've actually built things out, this is a fascinating or very, very powerful way to bring in additional context and start building out that context engine. But a lot of folks start using Hex or building it out for the concept of, these sort of reporting dashboards, things that are a little bit more persistent, that have a lot of business context baked into them. So what I can do instead is I can actually go and create a semantic model in Hex itself. So let's do one that's sales and marketing semantic model. Type with the description, we'll skip it. I'm going to look at that prod warehouse again. And now we've entered kind of a new pane of glass. This is our semantic modeling workbench. Similar to our notebook, we have a notebooking agent. We have threads for our conversational agent. We also have a modeling agent that is aware of the semantic modeling capabilities within Hex. And what's really neat is I can go and at that particular project. So if I want to do sales and marketing dashboard, create me a semantic model, something like this. So we'll trigger this. It's going to do the similar thing. It has access to that metadata we talked about. But in this case, it's very, very scoped to look and understand the exact project that is called Sales and Marketing Dashboard and the cell types within that project. So here we see we have these SQL cells. We have some data frame SQL that's going on. We have these joins it's trying to assess, and it's going to actually curate semantic models for us. So instead of kind of letting it do its thing, we'll skip through. For the sake of time, I'll jump into a view where we've actually created this. I've done the same exact prompt just ahead of time here. So we see we have those same 16 SQL cells that it's going to try to decipher and make sense of. And then ultimately, it will kind of come up with a game plan for me. It's going to start creating, it will do error prevention. It'll start creating out the models themselves. It will understand the relationships between the different base tables that we're using. It will understand the function call, the actual, the queries that are being made with specific functions, any sort of filters that make sense to pass through. All to say, it is baking all that information that's found within the project into a semantic model. So in this case, let's go ahead and explore this a little bit. I'll start with dim accounts here. We have our accounts table as kind of the information coming from the warehouse. We can build out these function calls, these measures of dimensions as well. And what's really neat, kind of powerful, in my opinion, is it's relationship aware coming from those SQL joins that were found within the project. So all to say, whether you're trying to import, say, an existing semantic view, whether you're just getting started, there's a way where Hex kind of has your back. We try to make it as simple as possible to bring it in. Now, for folks who have been doing this for a bit or have heard of semantic modeling, maybe folks who are a little bit more sensitive to vendor lock, we definitely hear you. That definitely makes sense. The last thing that I would want, or I think any of you want, or what Hex would want, is to lock you in with some sort of proprietary format. How do you juggle between semantic views and, say, Hex views, or a lookml file, or maybe a dbt's metric flow, right? This is where we're actually pursuing goals with Snowflake specifically. And there's kind of two big topics that I want to address here. One is this idea around an open semantic interchange. This is where it's a consortium about like 18 or maybe more different companies are coming together. Snowflake is spearheading this with us, where we are actually designing and making an approach where you can interchange this semantic model information between different systems, all in an effort to increase adoption of LLMs and to avoid vendor lock. The other thing that we're doing that's a little bit more short-term and nearsighted is you'll have the ability to write back these semantic models into semantic views. So we want to make sure we're always playing nice between the different systems. We don't want to lock you in with a proprietary YAML format that you have to constantly recreate. That's not our end goal. Our end goal is, if we're going to try to lock you in at all, is to ensure that the workflows and the actual experience is somewhere where something that you actually want to continue to use, come back to time and time again. So with that said, though, let's say I'm happy with this YAML representation right now, and I want to go publish this. We have a publishing workflow. In this case, you'll first be landed with a diff. This is a brand new model, so we haven't had any changes. They're just all brand new lines, so it's 42 different lines. And we have a few more. And what's really nice is actually build out references. So looking at downstream impact against your existing Hex projects. And one of the things that I really appreciate having built out semantic models in the past is the ability to interact with them in kind of this drag and drop like fashion, mimicking how, say, even the thread would do it under the hood, or how a business user would interact with it. So if I wanted to come, say, look at my opportunities semantic model, and I wanted to look at my total ARR across different stage names, sure. Let's go ahead and remove this. Excuse me. Like so, I can see we have an actual breakdown. I see the measures and the aggregations that are happening. I can view the generated SQL that it was doing under the hood. So I have this ability to really harden my semantic model before I put it in this like publication flow, before it gets to the hands of, say, the LLMs or my end users that can interact with it directly. I can then describe my changes, v1 semantic model, and I can publish this specific version. And here we are, we have our sales and marketing data model. Now to bring it kind of full circle, right, we kind of went from querying raw data, letting the LLM build out its context, giving it some more time to reason and to think about all the additional metadata we provided, to then extending and auditing that particular thread, going into creating these dashboards and reports that are consistently used by the business and are more persistent, taking that raw, very enriched data that our business users use and turning into something that is digestible for an LLM in the format of a semantic model. Now, to tie it all back together, I can actually start scoping. If I go back to the home screen of Hex to bring it to a thread, I can scope my particular prod data warehouse here to only utilize a semantic model. So in this case, it's going to become more and more deterministic over time. Right? As I harden this, as I model out more data, as I bring in more context, it will get better. So I can ask a similar question like, tell, or maybe give me a analysis, our accounts and the regions. At this point in time, it's going to just utilize the semantic model. It now does not have access to my entire prod data warehouse. It's not just looking at that gold layer, it's looking at very curated data that has been scoped over time. And this is this idea where trying to have the best responses possible, trying to build out this kind of unit test idea to then feed into the existing or prototyping versions of your LLM chatbots is not the approach, in my opinion. So this is going to go, it's going to trigger, we've kind of seen this, but there's one big kind of glaring effect here that I want to call out. And maybe some of you are seeing this today. How can I audit this or monitor this? You know, this is all great. We saw kind of a individual workflow from an individual thread, but this rolls out to say even 100 or 50 users. How can I monitor this? How do I know what these LLM systems are really doing, what my business users are actually using them for? And this is where the idea around auditing them at scale is very, very critical. And what we're doing, kind of our first pass on this, is what we call our Context Studio. It's currently in alpha with a few alpha partners, but I did want to highlight it because it's so important when building out these systems. Whether they're DIY systems, they're vendor-backed solutions, it's so critical to understand the usage over time, because that usage will actually entail the information you need on how to curate your context over time. So to start off, we can just look at agent conversations is what we're first highlighting. You can see, okay, what is just overall usage on my platform? Are people using the notebook more? Are they using threads? How many semantic models are being created? So on and so forth. You can look at total users by conversation volume. How many times, say, is Tabitha actually using threads? What sort of questions are they asking? As I go kind of more granular, we can see the specific types of questions that my users are using. And this right here, these are your unit tests. This is what's so powerful in this context flywheel, trying to bake everything in kind of this first pass and then realizing what your business users are asking, going back, trying to edit it. That is not the approach. The approach is to start a little bit broader, maybe build out 1 or 2 semantic models, and then you can go and actually have the business users build out your unit tests. These are the types of hardening questions that you need to then curate. And the way we go about this is you can go now into the context itself. So there's a few different kind of toggles or levers you can pull. The first and foremost here, kind of the simplest one, is the idea of just having a rules file, where I can build in, data quality guards for SQL, business definitions that I want, SQL styling that I personally like to use, any miscellaneous information, visualizations that I want to actually leverage. And this is all something that you can go in and just tweak immediately, right? I can edit this in Hex. I can start typing away as I'd like. I can then save it or import it elsewhere. The other big thing here you can do is looking at endorsed data itself. Having data that is blessed by, say, a data team, by your gold layer, you can actually kind of define what that means in the context of Hex and what gets fed to the LLMs. And then lastly, and arguably kind of most critically, but maybe the kind of mature approach here, is building out the semantic projects, where again, you can import these, which we highlighted, you can build out new ones. And as this capability grows, as this auditing grows, you'll be able to understand which specific tables are being utilized. How about answering questions like, well, how many times is X semantic model being utilized? Are we connecting or using two semantic models at once? And that needs to be, maybe joined at some point. How about which specific projects are being utilized the most? Should we model more of this data downstream? Is there any additional metadata I can provide on my column descriptions or table descriptions on the warehouse? All sorts of these questions are rather open-ended and not something that I'm seeing many people talk about in the field today. But I think this is ultimately kind of this unification around how you are building out this context is at the core of how we enrich and actually make these LLMs more deterministic in nature and ensure their accuracy over time as the business needs and questions grow. I hope this was thought-provoking, if anything. I hope you guys are thinking about this a little bit more holistically, a little bit more long-term. If you do have questions, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to have conversations that dive deeper into this. But with that said, thank you for watching. Appreciate your time.